those living as refugees abroad. The military chiefs who executed yesterday's coup against the democratically elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi have been accused by UN investigators of overseeing a brutal military campaign against the Rohingyas with genocidal intent, causing more than 740,000 to flee to Bangladesh. Hundreds of members of Myanmar's parliament remain confined inside their government housing in the country's capital today, a day after the military staged a coup and detained senior politicians, including Nobel laureate and de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi. President Joe Biden, facing his first major international crisis after Myanmar's military seized power, could impose a new program of sanctions, cut aid, or target generals and the companies they run to pressure for a return to democracy. Parts of northern New England waiting their turn to be pummeled by a heavy winter storm today, while residents of the New York City region digging out from under piles of snow that shut down public transport, cancelled flights and closed coronavirus vaccination sites. This huge snowstorm that brought chaos to the United States East Coast yesterday, cancelling these thousands of flights, closing schools and forcing the postponement of coronavirus vaccinations as New York steeled itself for almost 2 feet of snow. Following a record nationwide surge in early January for hospitalizations from COVID-19, which has so far infected over 26 million Americans and killed more than 444,000, healthcare workers at U.S. hospitals are speaking out about the toll of serving on the front line of the pandemic. As the Biden administration continues its push to vaccinate millions of Americans before COVID-19 mutates further, health experts and drug manufacturers have begun focusing their attention on inoculating children in the hopes of surpassing the herd immunity threshold for the virus. While children are less likely than adults to develop severe illness from COVID-19, they are known to contract and spread the disease asymptomatically. Dr. Fauci has estimated that the herd immunity threshold for COVID-19 is between 70% and 85% of the population. President Joe Biden told Republican senators during a 2-hour meeting yesterday that he's unwilling to settle on an insufficient coronavirus aid package after they pitched their slimmed-down $618 billion proposal that's a fraction of the $1.9 trillion that he is seeking. President Biden met with 10 Senate Republicans last night to discuss this relief legislation, and while no deal was reached, Senator Susan Collins said they had a very good exchange of views. Former President Trump facing a deadline today to respond to the U.S. House of Representatives impeachment charging, and the deadline comes just days after he parted ways with his initial legal team amid a reported dispute over how to respond to that charge. Lindsey Graham has threatened to call in the FBI to testify about security failures during the Capitol riots last month if Democrats try to call even one witness at Donald Trump's impeachment trial. An anti-Trump Republican group branded one of the co-founders and it has said that one of them is a predator, a liar, and an abuser after he was accused of sexually harassing young men who aspired to a career in politics. The Lincoln Project, a high-profile group which formed during the election campaign to prevent Donald Trump's re-election, said it was disgusted and outraged by the alleged actions of co-founder John Weaver. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell issued a tacit rebuke of controversial Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, slamming the Georgia Republicans' loony lies and conspiracy theories as a cancer for the party. Dustin Diamond, who played the role of Screech on the popular 1990s high school comedy Saved by the Bell, has died yesterday after a recent cancer diagnosis. He was 44 years old. A pair of NASA astronauts ventured out on their second spacewalk in under a week and completed a 4-year effort to modernize the International Space Station's power grid. President Joe Biden expected to announce a task force to reunify families separated at the U.S.-Mexico border during the administration of former President Trump. And President Biden has ordered a major review of asylum processing at the U.S.-Mexico border and the legal immigration system as he seeks to undo some of former President Trump's hardline policies. It is President Biden's administration asking the U.S. Supreme Court to cancel the upcoming oral arguments and delay further action on 2 pending appeals that were filed by his Republican predecessor over U.S.-Mexico border wall funding and the so-called Remain in Mexico asylum policy. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that the weekend protests and arrests in Russia are about the frustration that the Russian people have with corruption and with autocracy. A Russian court is due to consider jailing Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny for up to 3.5 years later today in a case that has sparked nationwide protests and talk of new Western sanctions. Russian prosecutors backed a request to imprison opposition leader Alexei Navalny for several years on old charges after police detained a record number of anti-Kremlin protesters across the country. Iranian state TV at the launch of the country's newest satellite-carrying rocket, which is set to reach a height of 500 kilometers. The footage of the solid liquid fuel rocket showed the launch taking place during daytime in a desert environment. Breast cancer has overtaken lung cancer as the most common form of the disease, according to the World Health Organization in Geneva today. And Dubai will start vaccinating people with the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine as the United Arab Emirates battles its biggest outbreak since the pandemic began. Britain will begin door-to-door COVID-19 testing of 80,000 people in a bid to stem the spread of a new highly infectious strain, so-called South African variant of the coronavirus. The Vatican museums have reopened after 88 days as Italy has relaxed COVID curbs. The familiar tinkling of ceramic cups and chatter returned to coffee bars across most of Italy as rigid COVID-19 restrictions were eased. Meanwhile, dogs in France are being trained to detect COVID-19 in human sweat. Vietnam confirming the latest virus outbreak being more contagious, a UK variant, and Malaysia's government has extended a lockdown and broad movement restrictions by 2 weeks as the Southeast Asian nation grapples with the surge in coronavirus infections that has pushed the cumulative total past 200,000 cases. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. And the pandemic postponed Olympics will go ahead this summer. And this news out of Tokyo by President Yoshiro Mori, who brushed aside any doubts about the event. The UK government opened visa applications for Hong Kongers with British national overseas passports, and China said it would stop recognizing the passports as valid travel documents. China's top diplomat calling for Beijing and Washington to put relations back on a predictable and constructive path, saying the United States should stop meddling in China's internal affairs like Hong Kong and Tibet. In its first response to the China-India border standoff, the Biden administration has voiced concern over Beijing's ongoing attempts to intimidate its neighbors and said it was closely monitoring the situation between China and India. Don Heflin, the U.S. charge of affairs, said that the Indo-U.S. defense partnership goes beyond trade and said the country was committed to further ties to achieve common interests and goals of a free and open Indo-Pacific. Reiterating the need to successfully implement Government of India's Atmanirbhar initiative, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh in Bengaluru said India cannot remain dependent on other countries for its defence. He spoke after inaugurating the second dedicated plant for the LCA Tejas at the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. With just a day left for Aero India 2021, the integrated aerobatic show of Surya Kiran and Sarang during the rehearsals became the highlight of the event today. And for the first time in history, Surya Kiran flying the fixed-wing Hawks and Sarang flying the rotary-wing advanced light helicopter are putting up that integrated show tomorrow. India registered 8,635 new coronavirus infections in a day, the lowest in 8 months, while the daily deaths have fallen below 100 after almost 9 months. The country is showing a declining trend of COVID-19 cases since the last 4 months, and the Union Health Ministry has decided to depute 2 multidisciplinary teams to Kerala and Maharashtra, which are contributing to almost 70% of total COVID-19 active cases, to collaborate with state health authorities in instituting public health measures for virus management. The Delhi University Teachers Association criticized the varsity for not giving colleges and teachers adequate time for preparation on the first day of limited reopening of colleges today. Congress, Shiromani Akali Dal, the Revolutionary Socialist Party, and CPIM gave adjournment motion notice today in the Lok Sabha over the demand on repealing all 3 farm laws in view of the farmers' protests. Delhi police, after receiving intelligence inputs from agencies, have asked Punjab and Haryana's Director Generals of Police to stop the farmers at their locations and prevent them from entering Delhi. The government has erected walls and planted spikes at the borders to ward off farm law protesters from entering Delhi. 4 months after the contentious agriculture bills were passed in Parliament, protests by farmers have continued unabated in several states of the country, of course including various borders of the national capital. And it was SAD Chief Sukhbir Singh Badal's car that was damaged and 4 people injured today in a clash between Congress and Akali workers during filing of nomination papers for Jalalabad municipal polls in the Fazilka district. The Indian cricket team finally began their next session today ahead of the upcoming 4-match test series against England, which begins this Friday in Chennai. And Pakistan will look to end a 17-year wait for a series win against South Africa and leapfrog the Proteas in the rankings in the second test that starts on Thursday. Australia's cricket tour of South Africa, meanwhile, has been postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Pakistan International Airlines issuing new directives for its cabin crew that include confiscation of passports on arrival abroad in a bid to control recent incidents of staff slipping away in other countries. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is